India, China, South Africa, Brazil, these sorts of places. So before we start, there's a few things I want to get out of the way. The first is that we don't have that many slides, right? We thought you'd appreciate that because at a conference like this, there's usually death by PowerPoint, isn't there? Slide after slide after slide. We've got a few pictures to show you later on, but for now I'm going to turn that off so that we can have a nice discussion, we can tell stories, we can share ideas, this sort of stuff. The second thing is, this is sort of like a jugalbandi, in that I'm the business type, Sean is the technology type, and we're going to try and riff off each other, like these classical music types do, don't they? And the third thing is that we will talk a lot more about failure today than about success. Right? Not because we are feeling grumpy, but because you learn more from talking about failure than success. And certainly my position is that in conferences around the world, we talk way more about success and we're very eager to hide all our failures. So today we don't want to do that. We definitely want to talk about failures, but also a few successes. So in the spirit of that, I want to ask you, how many of you have heard of Standish Group? Standish Group. Fairly popular name in IT now. Okay, one. Okay, there's a few hands. So famously, Standish Group studies failure of projects, right? So they've been doing this study for the last 20 years or so, and they publish an annual report. They go around the world studying various different IT projects and estimating successes and this sort of thing. And the last report I looked up was from 2011. It's called the Chaos Report from the Standish Group. And can you guess what percentage of projects they consider successful? What percentage of IT projects around the world are considered successful by the people who fund them?
43%.
3%, 43%, anything else? I heard 20 something.
Yeah, 20%.
Okay. If you averaged all that, you get to the answer probably. So wisdom of the crowds, right? So about 20, they say about 33%, right? But all your answers are well below the 50% mark. It's a damning indictment of our industry if you think about it. Right? Nearly 1/3 of projects succeed. That's it. Further, the report says another 45% of projects are questioned, challenged. Why? Because they've gone over budget, they've gone over time, users didn't quite like the features, either the quality or the quantity and all the rest of it. Now, you can quibble about the methodology of the Standish Group, and there's enough skeptics out there, right? But having been a long-term client of software for the last 12 or 13 years in various roles, I actually roughly agree with those numbers. Only about 1/3 of our projects really succeed. Is that a fair assessment? You guys feel that as well? Okay. So the question then is, what can we do to improve the success percentage? Which then means we've got to define what return is before we think about return on investment. Now there's two ways to define return. The first way, it's perhaps easier, is to talk about function points, the number of bugs, etc. Which is traditionally how IT is defined it. Right? So IT then focuses on software that doesn't crash, right? And it generally works as originally commissioned. But I want to submit to you that that's the wrong way of thinking about return of the software or an IT project. I think the right way of doing it is to measure the business impact that it's had. Right? Like I said, my background is in business, although I'm a long-term client of software in various roles as a product manager, as a product owner, as a marketing guy, a strategy guy, all kinds of things. And the way I think of success is, has it impacted my business positively? It's no good if we build something bug-free, but it had no impact on our business. Right? So how do I measure impact? I always think of three things. One is, did we increase revenue? Right? The second is, did we decrease cost? And the third one is a bit more nebulous, is, did it improve the long-term competitive advantage of the company? It's harder to measure, but that doesn't mean it's not important to measure. It's a really hard one to measure. Now, bug-free software and software that impacts the business in nice ways sometimes have something in common, but they don't always overlap. I'll tell you a story from the 90s. Certainly, how many of you were in the IT industry in the 90s? A few old so-and-sos like me. So, in the 90s, there was this highly successful banking product firm. Highly successful banking products firm. You guys probably can guess the name of it. And a really good friend of mine used to work there, and he tells the story often. So I'll tell you guys. I'm deliberately picking up the story from the 90s to illustrate it. Now, this company had a highly successful DOS-based. Everyone remember DOS? Command line interface and all the rest of it. C prompt and so on. Very successful product based on DOS that they used to sell to banks all around the world. And almost literally all around the world, right? Africa and South America and Far East Asia and all the rest of it. Now, in the late 90s, management spotted a big opportunity. They looked around and said, everyone in these banks is using what now? Windows. Right? No one wants to use DOS anymore because it's harder to use and all the rest of it. Right? And Windows got a nice graphical user interface, and let's get on with it. Now, they spent about a year trying to repurpose the product. Remember, this is a product that works well. It's a product that's got good acceptance in the market, right? And they spent a year trying to develop a Windows version. At the end of the year, they've tested everything. Everything looks great. They put it in front of the user, except that the user rejects it. Why? Because none of the keyboard shortcuts worked. Have you ever seen an accountant use a PC? What part of the keyboard do they use the most? Function keys. The thing on the right-hand side that laptops don't have, the traditional keyboards have, the little numeric keypad, they are like Usain Bolt on that numeric keypad. Right? They go, they're incredibly fast with it. So they came back and said, well, you see, this product looks beautiful, it's delightful to look at and all the rest of it, except our productivity is not going to get a boost because the function keys don't work, and the shortcuts don't work, and the whole thing doesn't fit our current mental model. Now, if you go back to bug-free software versus software that made a difference to the company's business, you will see that there is no overlap because the product worked as it was supposed to work. Right? However, the product didn't make any money. Would you call that project a success or no? You wouldn't call it a success. But by traditional definitions of function points and bugs and this kind of stuff, it is an outstanding success because no one discovered a bug, because no one used it. So, mercifully, no one spends 1 year inside a room trying to build software without getting users involved anymore. Right? These days, people use Agile, iterative development, and ideas like that. It's not many names, but generally the concept is, what is the concept? Every 15 days, every 6 weeks at the max, you show your client and you show your users what you're building and see if there's acceptance and then you go from there. It's a fantastic idea. And I believe it's greatly helped with the quality of software in the world. Right? Quality as defined as the kind of stuff that users want to use, not bug-free. Right? So in some ways, Agile has improved return on investment. I think we should accept that. But I want to say that Agile is necessary, but not a sufficient condition these days. Because over the last 12 years, the industry has changed in such a way that it's become very, very hard to figure out what to build. Right? Humanity is generally figure out how to build software. What to build is the harder problem. That is the harder problem in IT. And it's important that the IT industry thinks about, and all of you as well, think about a methodology that will help business discover what to build. And like I said, what to build has gotten infinitely harder. And I think there is three reasons behind it. I'll run through them quickly. The first one is the explosion in the number of platforms. The explosion in the number of computing platforms. Some of you were in the IT industry in the 90s. Then you built for one platform, maybe two operating systems, right? Windows this and Windows that. Done. Now, if you want to build software, I have almost infinite options, right? You can build for Windows, you can build for Mac, you can build for the cloud, where in theory, any computer should be able to use it. We know that's not true in practice. You've got to test on all manner of browsers. And then you've got to think about tablets. And then you've got to think about mobile operating systems. Remember, this is one piece of software that needs to work in all these different contexts. Even when you think about mobile operating systems, there is, how many would you say, 3 viable platforms? iOS, Android, and Windows? Yeah. I want to say Windows because I use a Windows phone. For some inexplicable reason. Actually, my niece bought me phones. And then even in those operating systems, do you build a native app or should you build a browser-based app? Right? It's hard to know. The business guy, it's really hard to know. Well, you can look at macroeconomic trends and all the rest of it. But that's not the same as putting software in front of people. But once you choose the platform, then you need to think about APIs. Right? These days, all software have APIs seemingly. You've got to think about, should it recognize QR codes? Should it print out QR codes? What kind of social media integration should all these things have? Right? And then you want to think about what multimedia. Should it have videos? Should it have audio? Should it have pictures? Should it give people the ability to click a picture with their phone and upload it, etc. And then you come to the features. If you're building a small or mobile version of an e-commerce website, should it have product reviews? Should it have forums, etc. And then finally, you also got to have to think about what to do with the data that's coming through all these devices. We've established that the explosion of devices has happened. There are a lot more building platforms now. And since people are using these things, what happens? You're getting a lot of data. And that's the big data analytics movement, isn't it? So people are saying you've got to be able to use that data to improve your product and all the rest of it. Now in this, I'm confused as a business guy. There's just too many options, right? So explosion of platforms is a problem. The second problem is what is known as consumerization of IT. Anyone familiar with that? Consumerization of IT? Again, in the 90s, it used to be that most people used a computer only in the office. So if you said to them, well, this is how interfaces are like nice children, they listen. But now, people are used to Facebook and iTunes and everything else that we use, and they all have a fantastic user experience. And they expect the same thing out of enterprise products as well. Has anyone felt that? You want our products to be delightful to use, not just feature-rich. We want them to be delightful. We want to get joy out of using them.
Not boring.
Not boring, exactly. Right? I mean, ERP software used to bore people to death. I don't think there is any human being in the history of the planet that has used ERP software willingly. Only because it's been thrust on them. But now, Gen X, right? So my niece's generation, she's what, 18, right? Her generation onwards, till about 35, maybe 30. People refuse to use all this boring stuff, right? And You can say whether this feature exists or not, but how do you say if it's boring or not? You've got to test it. And you've got to have 20 different options before you know if something is delightful or not. So this consumerization of IT is making it even harder for me to know what to build. One final trend that I will talk about in this category is this notion of the age of turbulence. See, change is a human reality. Human beings have always changed, technologies have always changed. But the pace of change is quickened dramatically in the last 7 or 8 years. Anyone feel that? You get the sense that things are changing too fast? One example. What is common to telegrams, SMS, and WhatsApp? What's common? They're all messaging. They're all ways to send short messages. Right? I mean, telegrams are not actually that old. When I was in college, I used to telegram, Dad, need money. Right? Short message. Telegrams took 100 years to reach 1 billion users. Wow. 100 years to reach 1 billion users. SMS? 10 years. WhatsApp? About 10 minutes? Not really, 2 years. Right? So you see the pace of change. And smartphones are not even that old, they are 7 years old. Right? The iPhone was launched. I had the misfortune of launching a product on exactly the same day as the iPhone. Exactly the same. What do you think Ditto or PR? True story, be good. Sure. Yes, launched on the same day as the iPhone. Slightly contrasting fortunes, but we won't go there. So, smartphones are only 6.5 years old, really. But we can't imagine a life without them. So you see the pace of change. And in 2006, I remember writing specifications to take a CRM product mobile. I wrote specifications for it. What was my first platform of choice? What was my first mobile platform of choice, do you reckon? CMMI? Close? Close? Actually, it was BlackBerry. They used to be called crackberries in those days. Crackberries, because of addiction and all the rest of it. Now, as it happens, the iPhone happened. And we had to change the specifications really quickly. In a matter of weeks, really. All of a sudden, BlackBerry was no longer the preferred thing. Even CMMI wasn't. So there is the sense that things are changing a lot faster than they used to. Right? So I may feel like I really know what to build now. But 3 months later, I may not know. Right? So any methodology that IT comes up with, and I'm playing the role of the business guy today, as you know, any methodology that IT comes up with, I'm convinced must help me discover what to build. If there's one thing that you take away from these last 15 or 20 minutes, it's that one. Help business figure out what to build. Because that's the far harder problem to solve, and that really is the key to getting ROI out of Agile or indeed any other methodology. Because building the wrong thing very well is actually disastrous, if you think about it. So Sean's got ideas for us on how to help us build the right thing.
I hope so. All right. So, can you hear me without the mic? Yeah. All right.
The words become clear.
Oh.
Okay.
Is this better?
Yes.
All right. So we're left with a problem from Nav. Nav's my business partner, and I'm supposed to help him out. I'm in IT, and he comes back and tells us that he has a general idea about what he wants to build. He has a general thought that it might make him X amount of money. He's not really sure. But what he does want to know is, can you show me something? Can you get me something? Can you give me something that will help me figure that out? Help me know for a fact that this is working or it's not working. Now, again, actually it's not that long. I was in the 90s, I actually played more in the 2000s. About 4 years ago, I was working with a large retailer, at one time the largest retailer in the US. They're a 100-year-old company, and we were trying to build a similar product for them. They're trying to build a product that they had to go live with. They had all these ambitions around that, what needs to get done, great. So we sat down, we figured out what needs to be built, and we realized that we had to make a change in their mainframe. What we did is we went up to their mainframe department and we sat down and said, here's a change. How soon can you put it in? We had actually done a little bit of specking out, we'd done a little bit of building out, and we said, how soon can you put this in? The guy pulls up a book, yay big, literally yay big, and he says, all right, you're coming to me in the last minute, so I can do it in like really quickly for you, 9 months from now. That was a reality for those guys. I mean, mainframes that they used, they had no people actually run it. They had people who had slotted change requests all the way down to 9 months. So the earliest slot he could give me was 9 months from now. And we went back to business, and business said that's not going to fly, and we just dumped the project. So that clearly the return on that investment was zero for them. So coming back to this, Nav's essentially saying, help me figure out what I need to build, and that is my ROI for me. So before we start and jump into Agile, let's just have a quick baselining as what I think is Agile, so that we're all on the same page. So most people know what waterfall is. We're talking about, we have a requirements session, probably a few months long, then we do some design. That might be the requirements talk about what the software looks like, how it behaves. The design features talk about how it's going to work, the object design, the table design, which interfaces, blah, blah, blah. We actually build it, and we run into the testing. The testing really lets us know, the UAT especially lets us know whether the clients are happy or not with it, and eventually put it in production, and we try to integrate and deploy. Most times it works all right, sometimes it probably fails spectacularly. Because what was asked for and what's happened in the reality now is very different. A simple example, what's happened to us once we were working about 10 years ago actually, was an insurance company. We built a software exactly with all these features, and when we went live, we realized that the ordinance that controlled it, was the insurance software, had changed. So we couldn't go live. After putting in a good 6 months of effort, we just couldn't go live because the laws had changed. What Agile does, on the other hand, is we try to break it up into smaller releases, maybe